emotional intelligence is something that I think we're losing quite a bit often. We're stuck with our heads in mobile phones and stuff, not reading rooms and seeing people and reading body language.
A lot of people don't understand their passions yet, because either they haven't been exposed to the right environment or the right people, but that's okay.
When I first joined EasyJet, being a retailer, I was asking on Monday morning trading meeting, what's the sales of last week for in flight? I said, well, Bill, what do you mean? So we don't get those for another week.
The hardest nut to crack is the post-booking phase.
Yep.
Is because the customer has left your aircraft, has left your crew, so there isn't an interaction touch point.
Yep.
It's over to the hotel, the car company, the destination now, and I'll see you when you come on board next.
Well, instead of putting people what we call furloughed or losing, we kept our innovation team in place, and we just piled through our innovation backlog while we weren't flying. So when we start flying again, we're going to delight customers. They're going to come back and see all these new features on the AA app they hadn't seen before.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Flying High Club. Thank you so much for the response. We are growing so much thanks to your support, your messages, the watch time that you're giving us. We're absolutely flying on our socials, and it's so amazing to have you on board. Today's a really interesting one, and it's something that we refer to commonly about building a network and reaching out to people that you find interesting and having really interesting conversations. Today I have a retail expert, an e-commerce expert that has a deep history in airline and commercial retailing, especially in the digital front. Those skills that are really, really attributable to the next generation of airline.com websites. He's an innovation advisor and an innovative person at heart, and one to really challenge the mindset of today's C-level and execs to build the world of tomorrow. It's Bill McKimm, everyone.
Thanks, Raza. That's quite an introduction.
I hope it was. I
hope I live up to that.
I definitely want to do you justice. Bill, like how I opened up, it was, again, our paths had never crossed before. Just to put that out there. We bumped into each other by a mutual friend at the Aviation Festival in Lisbon. Commonly, you could just be hello, hi, great to meet you, and walk off. Yeah. We ended up speaking for a while. Yep. We ended up having dinner. Then we ended up going out late in the nights of Lisbon, which was a fantastic night. I left earlier. I couldn't last as much as you guys to be bright and early the next day, and you beat me there as well. But it was such a great conversation to have, and learning about your background, I immediately jumped at the chance and said, Bill, I need to have you on the podcast. We need to discuss the journey that you've been on. So Bill, just for those who don't know you, or haven't met you, it'd be great to cover your background, how you post-education or even growing up, where that was, and how you got into the aviation sector.
Okay, thanks, Raza, and great to be here. And it's nice to meet people sort of in these sort of circumstances. It was only a few months ago, and we did have quite a few common contacts, which is always the way, and our networks are always overlapping more than people think they do. Where do I start? So originally, I'll go right back. Originally from, you might tell from my dulcet tones, originally from Northern Ireland. Grew up there. Probably an interesting time, 1970s, 80s. It was a period of a lot of difficulty in the country in terms of, troubles and sectarianism and all that great stuff. And so I lived through that. And I was saying to someone just recently, that was normal for me. That was normal life. And I think you sort of, the hand you're dealt is how you deal with it. And so I lived in Northern Ireland until I was, left school 16. At university wasn't even on the cards at that point. I didn't know the word university existed, I don't think. So I left school 16. I worked in some market stalls for some friends of mine. And then did that for a number of years, and then I was offered a job in a shop in Belfast. And I guess that's a very basic embryonic stage of getting involved in retail. I had no idea what career I wanted. It's interesting when you hear people saying, I wanted a career of doing X, Y, and Z. I left with not much ambition, like sports, like music, but I had no idea from a career perspective. So yeah, I did that. I worked in a number of shops in Belfast. Worked in market stalls. I filled my Toyota van up with lots of stuff in the morning. Went and sold it. And then I worked in for a friend of mine as a manager in a shop, and ultimately area manager of a number of retail outlets in the north of Ireland, up until the early 90s. And that was kind of really, an eye opener for me in terms of my ability to go and talk to people, on a shop floor, engage, inspire, to buy stuff off me generally. I was never a particularly extroverted person as a child. I was quite introverted actually. And so that was kind of a bit of a moment to realize I could sort of survive in that environment, putting myself in difficult situations and being good at what I did. But a lot of friends were leaving Northern Ireland in the early 90s. And I spoke to someone about potentially going to university as a mature student. I was 23. I was offered a place in Manchester University on studying retail marketing. And they were looking for a number of vocational experts who'd worked in retail, as opposed to just having
A levels or
exactly.
O-levels,
People so mixing it up with actual experienced retailers, which was I didn't realize I was an experienced retailer, but I managed to black my way in, and I spent 4 years studying retail marketing in Manchester, and that was me thinking I would leave Northern Ireland for a few years and come back, and I've never been back since. so that's that's 31 years ago.
Wow.
Like so 30 years ago this year was when I went to Manchester. So yeah, as part of that, say retail marketing, studying some of the mechanics around buying behavior and logistics, and e-commerce wasn't really on the agenda then. Like early 90s, the internet hadn't
really
quite happened.
So dial-up internet.
Exactly.
If that.
Exactly. So Porter's 5 Forces and all those classic things were still going around then, though.
Oh yeah, they're still going around now.
They're still going around now. Exactly. Some things survive. I do laugh when I still see those being, regurgitated on various presentations.
I don't pay attention to this.
Exactly. So did that. Had a work placement in a company called MFI. If people are old enough. Remember the
Yep.
Yeah, remember the halcyon days of flat pack furniture, right?
That's the one. Yeah, flat pack garages and pre-built kitchens.
Absolutely, all that's great stuff. Had a sort of a work placement there. Then they invited me to come and work for them, and that was in '97. I'm showing my age now. So I was moving to London, and I was working for a big retailer. I was a buyer of beds, my first role, or assistant buyer of beds, and then my first jobs was to name a range of beds.
Branding expert.
Branding expert, absolutely. That was good fun, and a great company to work for. I progressed pretty quickly through the ranks and became trading director there. Within 3 or 4 years, I was accountable for trading a £1 billion business, which was a lot for a young boy from Northern Ireland.
It's quite an achievement.
It was fast. It was a fast moving space. I had a few good mentors who trusted me and saw potential, I think, and they gave me a chance to run that. So I had a fairly big team of 35, 40 people working for me within 3 or 4 years. And so I really enjoyed my time there.
There's a couple of things to unpack there, and you said it there is the foundational sets for sales and communication and things like that. And this is something I've raised in previous podcasts and discussions as that's a key skill. If you're going to have any skill in the world, you need to learn sales. And I think people misconstrue sales as me knocking on the door and trying to sell you an item. It's the communication. It's the ability to convince or change someone's mind to believe in something that you are providing. Service, product, whatever that is. I really think that skill is dying. And it worries me. Because you need to sell yourself, and I think we'll come to it, but you need to sell yourself to other companies to hire you. Your CV is a sales tactic. This is selling yourself out there as well. There's different mechanisms, but you need to have the communicational aspect. What do you think about that? What's the importance of that, and do you think it's dying?
Yeah, be able to read the room. I think emotional intelligence is something that I think we're losing quite a bit often. You know, we're stuck with our heads in mobile phones and stuff, not reading rooms and seeing people and reading body language. And there's definitely something in that which you get from working in a sales environment from an early age. You get to assess situations and respond to them. I think there's that element of sales, and then there's the element of sales as we would call, you know, a salesperson. And further in my career, I did that, but it's kind of, that's more about, for me, I never saw myself as a salesperson per se. I saw myself as I still do, as a relationship builder and a connector. And the power of the network, the power of our networks, is something you don't realize. It's that sort of embryonic stage in your career.
The network effect.
Yeah, the network effect is, you just don't put any thought into it. It's just a bunch of experiences that you gather, and sometimes you move from one to the next and don't bring them with you. But the people you meet become much more influential later in your career than you could imagine when you're younger. So yeah, I totally agree. I think the power of sales is a very interesting concept.
Because I see it on short form content and online and stuff. A lot of people that have created multi-billion pound businesses, million pound businesses. The key they tell you to do is sales. If you're going to learn anything, learn sales. And I think no one listens to that advice. Goes on to, you know, what do I need to sell? I'll sell online or anything like that. The power of selling in person is, it's the number one skill in my eyes. And
sometimes it's not a learned thing. Sometimes this thing is natural for some people, and some people just, you know, for various reasons, they're just not comfortable in that sort of environment, selling themselves. But we have the tools around us these days to make that anybody can present themselves in a way which is attractive, right? And I think, listen to some of your previous podcasts talking about how you sell yourself and how you adapt your CV to the environment you're looking at. That's so correct. You know, and understanding the situation, adapting how you present yourself in the right kind of way for that situation is something that you need to really think about more. I think more today than ever, to be honest.
So what? I know we're going off a bit on, and we'll come back. But what would you advise to someone then that's young, maybe fresh out of university? Think about where you were at that time. Maybe didn't know where you wanted to go, but wanted. You know, what advice would you give them?
Well, I've got teenage kids now who are 16, 17. So, and I think the school system really still does force you into making decisions on your career. You're defined by your GCSE grade. You're defined by your A levels. The reality is, yes, they're important to have qualifications, and it's good discipline, but go with it. You go. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was younger, but I think if you can just be curious, listen a lot to people, ask questions, then I think you'll sort of figuring out, you know, answers to problems you didn't know existed, and then you can present yourself in the right kind of way. You'll figure out, you know, where your skill sets are in time. It doesn't, like how you are at 21 is different than how you are at 51. It's you know, you obviously evolve in terms of skills, but I think being prepared to, especially in today's society, I think we're going off on a tangent, but you know, 50 years ago, you know, the top 5 companies probably existed, you know, were not tech companies, right? And industries had much more longevity. But nowadays, the rise and fall of industry means you might have to educate yourself 2 or 3 times in one lifetime to learn new skills.
So multiple pivots. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's the education system is still geared to go to university, learn one thing, and if you go, that might be okay if you're a doctor or you're
dentist or something really specific. Yeah.
But in most commercial industries, you know, there's speed of innovation, which we'll talk about later, means that you need to almost re-educate all the time.
And I second that. I mean, you can take my career as a really basic example. Is not many people know this, but I'm a biomedical scientist by degree. It fascinates people, but being locked in a lab, playing with poo and experimenting on blood, it's not something I just want to do as a daily thing. You know, the moment I was told that, you know, you can have poo samples explode on you, I thought that's enough for me. I'm out. I'm out. I'm not dealing with that. But yeah, no, I did it from a fascination of, I saw my parents getting old. I saw them getting sick. I wanted to get to the bottom of what was causing it. So I educated myself to help do that. And you know, to an extent that worked. It helped change diets, all that sort of stuff. But I got to the root cause. But after that, I was like, I don't want to do this as a career. I want to do something else. And I fell back into the space of, went to consultancy. My first client was an airline. That's when my bug began.
Mm.
So it was like completely different tangent to where I was educated from. And it happens so commonly to so many other people that we've spoken to.
Yeah. And just knowing that, and going with it, and recognizing that, that if you can do stuff and work on stuff that you're actually passionate about, that's a hugely rewarding career to be in, because you get up in the morning, you want to do stuff. So many people are in careers or jobs. It's a grind. They're clock watching and they want to finish. And I guess the footballer's the ultimate example of that. But working in the aviation industry probably isn't far behind it for some people. And that's kind of
some aspects I change, but no, you're right. It is and I'm going to be the cynic where I hear this on podcasts. Follow something that you're passionate about. A lot of people don't understand their passions yet, because either they haven't been exposed to the right environment or the right people, or it's a temporary passion where I'm really passionate about this. Get into it and like, this is boring. I'm going to move on to something else. I can be a really stringent example of that. But that happens. But that's okay.
Yep.
It's the pivoting. It's the constant pivoting of where things are going, where you show your interest. And that is a unique person in themselves. And a lot of people refer to themselves as innovators then, because they're able to quickly pivot, grab skills, become really good at those and working those, and then pivot to the next, but have a broad view of multiple avenues and industries, which is an amazing person to even know and be a part of. So I highly rate that. But coming back to your growth then, so from you being the sort of director of trade and MFI and then moving forward, how does that...
Well, I guess, during that time, that was our 6 or 7 years, the concept of e-commerce became a thing to a certain extent. IKEA came to the UK, and obviously that they
disrupted the market massively.
It disrupted the market, new business models, lower price points, economies of scale, IKEA fashion, all of that stuff, and I think MFI didn't particularly respond well to that as a retailer. But I think at that point I was looking to explore other opportunities. E-commerce was only probably less than 3% of our revenue. We toyed with it, and but then I was approached by Tesco to launch a new concept called Tesco Direct, which was non-food online catalogue. A lot of it was copying the Argos catalogue. I probably shouldn't say that. It was like a 1,000-page catalogue, and even thinking about recreating a 1,000-page catalogue today just sounds crazy, right? And that was only less than 20 years ago. So I joined the leadership team there to help run the furniture aspect of that and the household. So I was part of that team. So we leveraged the Tesco.com commerce platform, and at that point it was the biggest foods retailer in the world. So bar none. So Tesco groceries online was a trailblazer and a pioneer, and so a lot of the platform was in place, and we took a lot of that existing platform and applied that to a non-food instant, along with creating a 1,000-page catalogue. So that was great fun and really sharpened the pencil in terms of, being around people who were really smart, because Tesco was a well-known brand, and Tesco.com was part of Tesco, and Tesco Direct was part of Tesco.com. So it's like a box in a box, one of those Chinese Russian doll things. Yeah. It's a bit like that. But really good people, really sharpened the pencil, got me really focused on e-commerce and understanding, omni-channel, as we then started to call it, online, offline retailing, and how you create, customer journeys and all of that kind of stuff, and payments, everything goes with it. So a massive education, only there 3 years, but I think it really was a bit of a direction changer for me towards e-commerce and technology, which I learned a lot more about in later career.
So a lot of people go through that, or I've seen people. So I've been digitally native from the technology I've been exposed to since growing up. I'm not going to say that, but I'm young. Okay, but I've seen people that I've come into the workforce with that have known a certain way really struggle to adapt to this changing tech, and either are resistant and deliberately resistant because they feel fearful that they'll be out of a job, and recognize that I don't feel like I can learn this. You went through the .com bubble, really, right? The emergence of the internet, the online selling. Like loads of people said, you won't buy this online. You can't buy a sofa online. You need to see it. You need to
crazy, right?
All that out the window. How many people do it now? tons,
You buy
right?
cars online, all right?
Exactly. You can do all of that now.
Yeah.
But you were right there in its infancy, so that's quite
Yeah.
fascinating. Like,
Yeah.
was there certain things that you saw that still exist today as a sort of fundamental, or has that completely changed now with the speed and movement of the tech?
Yeah, I mean, when I was there, I spent a period of time looking at clothing, Florence and Fred, and all that great online clothing stuff that Tesco used to sell. We were looking at, what was then disruptors. This company called ASOS.
Oh, yeah.
We were going, wow, that's really cool. They have they have video content on their product pages and they have people on catwalks. That's incredible, We thought if I won't catch on, that's just, people won't be interested in that stuff. So we were saying stuff that we didn't respond to quick enough, probably. We saw the rise of Amazon, and I was at Tesco, and that was, right, this could be quite big. And I was commercial lead. We had a project, I could probably say now, it was called Project Nile, which was like Nile Amazon, to try and combat the marketplace of Amazon and build our own marketplace. And we sort of understand the complexities around that as well. So I think the marketplace stuff was definitely something we were watching quite a bit, and which I followed through the rest of my career. I've been involved in various guises in marketplaces. I think that sort of multi-category upsell, cross-sell initiative. People who bought this also like this. We were playing with that back then, and video content, like likes of ASOS and stuff. But the cost to serve is quite high, right? So getting every single item photographed the right kind of way with the right images and stuff was quite difficult. And of course, the challenge that Tesco had was it's quite a legacy business, so it couldn't pivot and respond quick enough to some of that stuff, perhaps as ASOS could back then.
Yeah,
ASOS is a very different company now than it was 20 years ago. Definitely we're seeing a lot of emerging trends. I mean, the mobile wasn't really a thing then. It was mini desktop. The first smartphones kicked in was probably 2007, 2008, something like that.
Yeah.
So that then mobile became quite a big thing just after I left Tesco. Then that's probably is a good segue into why I'm probably here. In many ways, I was approached by EasyJet, and EasyJet wanted to bring someone in who wasn't an industry expert or who'd been through airline industry but who brought a retail lens to what they were doing at that point. And at this point, of course, EasyJet was probably only about maybe 15, 13 years old. Still quite a young airline, really, in many ways. And they had a lot of what they called, not my propeller heads, wasn't my definition of them, but to bring a new idea. And so they asked me to become director of ancillary revenue. I didn't know what ancillary revenue was either.
What's an ancillary?
I still think it's a strange thing to call something, right? Because by definition it means it's on the edge. I come in at a time we were launching EJ2, which is the next commerce platform, and renegotiating partnerships and changing the whole ancillary proposition in many ways. We just launched speedy boarding.
Amazing.
And so I was building on top of that with EasyJet Plus, annual subscriptions and credit cards and all kinds of. It was really good fun.
But so this is an interesting one. So there's 2 points, and one's a challenging one, and maybe I'll be seen as legacy, but definitely won't aspire to that. But let me start on the second point. So who were you aspiring to be like in EasyJet, very young, creating these digital native products and new ancillaries and stuff? Because you just had legacy as examples around you. A lot of the time, as an industry, we're quite reactive. We see one do it and we follow, or were you taking it deliberately from outside? Did you see other competitors doing similar things that you were following, or did you just say, we're just going to create and lead? We don't know who we're looking at. We're going to create.
I wouldn't say we're definitely pioneers in many aspects, but of course we had Ryanair at the same time, and what they were doing was very similar. So there was a direct competitor in the low cost carrier space, and that kept us on our toes from a price point perspective. Price per seat, revenue per seat was focusing on that. And clearly, we were going through a growth phase. We had some challenging shareholders who wanted to take dividends out. We wanted to grow, so it was definitely a growth phase for us in that part of the business. We probably looked at BA. We looked at the fly carriers, for a bit of inspiration, more on probably the experiential side of things. And what are they doing? And I was there less than 4 years at EasyJet, but even during that time, that spectrum from low cost carrier like Ryanair at one side and a BA at the other, we definitely moved along the spectrum towards BA. And some of the research would validate that, but we're still fundamentally a low cost carrier. What I try to bring to it though, and to answer your question, was more that retail lens. So this thing called dynamic packaging, people adding, hotels and car rental in the booking funnel, great. But what's the data behind that? How are we recommending certain products at the right time to the right people? What's the upsell, cross-sell opportunities we have? So bringing that to it was something we focused a lot on as part of the next iteration of the website to allow us to be more dynamic in that aspect.
Yeah.
Which is what they wanted. They wanted retail thinking, and that was so I was taking more inspiration from retail than I was from other airlines.
So this is the controversial part, or the legacy thinking part. Is I've often said that we should get people from outside the industry to really challenge how it works. I often see them fall flat on their face because they don't realize the bloody complexity that goes along with an airline. Because then you think, should have appreciated that. We could have told you that kind of thing. And that's not arrogance. It's just a general. Because you come in with this purest view of it's going to be set up like how normal retail is set up. Good gosh, when you go into the minefield and you realize what an aviation system looks like to try to become a retailer, you probably want to move away and leave the door and be like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
And those brave souls like yourself that spent 4 years tackling it, and you realize, God, this industry still hasn't moved forward.
Yeah.
And we're still chatting away at it. That part is, I don't know what to say. I'd be like, yes, bring people from outside. And then you have, no, but he doesn't know the acronyms and how this connects to this. And, what a booking class is, what an EMD is, all that sort of stuff. How's it going to connect to PSS? To them, they'll be like, you guys are crazy. It's just a database and a forward layer. It's quite simple. But then they realize, how does that go for you? Was that a shock to the system?
Well, it was a shock to me, obviously, coming from the mega company, which was Tesco, which had all the structure and processes in place, to fundamentally a startup airline, was a shock. As you'll know, the low cost model is outsourced as much as possible, right? So that our operating costs were kept fairly tight because we're about growth, and so all our partners were outsourced. Whether it be car rental, hotel, travel insurance, ground handling, and beyond. There was a lot of outsourced partners. But in terms of being able to bring a new way of thinking and thinking about what's the structure of this organization, how can we use the skills we do have to make customers' experiences better, I think it was actually positive because there was the ability to go and do stuff. There was it was kind of, how do you think? One of the first decisions I had to make. I thought it was a trick question. After the booking confirmation, you get a pop up, and this still happens. And I'm flabbergasted. I still see this all the time. You get a pop up says, "Congratulations on booking your flight." You click here for a £20 cashback, and it's like oh great, but I won't name the company in question, but there's a lot of customer complaints in the back of that because customers are clicking on it. And obviously, they're capturing some sort of personal data or bank data. And so our customer service team weren't particularly happy, even though it was quite an interesting revenue stream for us. And my challenge was do you kill that because it's giving bad customer service, or do you maintain it and grow it because there's revenue with it?
There's a balance.
You trying to trick me out in this one? It's like, see what this guy's all about. But we ended. I said, look, we can't do that. Ultimately, that's not going to be a great customer experience. We want repeat purchases and stuff like that. So, but I wanted to create much more better upsell post booking. I think there's more we can do post booking with destination services, ground transportation, and other stuff, where we can sell more effectively and get control of it rather than outsourcing that bit to someone else. I think that ultimately that's kind of my philosophy still in that kind of stuff.
Sort of, what was your biggest frustration there at EasyJet?
I mean, it's hard. I had a really big target, right, and there was limitations around what I couldn't do because of the brand license.
That's interesting.
From after the IPO, so there was limits to the amount of non-core revenue you could drive. So there's a bit of frustration around that. I think it was just hard, the low operating cost. We had a team of ancillary revenue team, about 7, 8 people maybe, turning over a big chunk of the company's profit, and the budgets go higher and higher every year. More aircraft come, so higher budgets, lower operating costs. It's hard.
All the pressure's on you
because
the revenue doesn't come from just the seat on the plane. It comes from everything added on, right? The speedy boarding, the extra hotel, car, all that sort of stuff.
And it's a challenging time. When I joined, I think Andy Harrison, who was the CEO at the time, said, "Look, just so you know, there's always a crisis in the airline industry." I said, "What do you mean there's always a crisis?" And I said, "It can't be that bad." So within 2 months, the aviation fuel price, the price of oil bottomed out, so it was a disaster. We'd hedged the whole pot of oil at a different price, and then all of a sudden we had this big gap on our price. And the financial crisis happened. 2008. It's like massive impact on what we were doing in terms of consumer spend. Although we made it, actually, ironically, we made our way through that quite well because we were a low cost carrier. I think some of the fly carriers might have had a worse time back then. And then we had like volcanoes in Iceland, ash clouds. There was like always a strike, normally in France. There was like always something why there was disruption happened to the network, and that created a lot of people focusing on that rather than on the more innovative stuff. So there's always a crisis means there's always BAU. Which is still a frustration of mine with many companies I work with and advise. It's like BAU needs to be dealt with. The lights have to stay on, right? But you can't do that always at the expense of innovation. Otherwise, you will die eventually. So I think that was the frustration more than all. It's like it was that constant grind of just driving more revenue per seat and more aircraft arriving. I think some of my colleagues in the low cost carrier space now, and some of the orders they have for more planes coming in, it's just crazy because you've got to utilize that, right, and make money at the same time. That's hard.
And the turnaround time that you have to do, while a conventional flag carrier, your airlines that have been around for years will fly, go over, they'll have a bit of a stop and then come back again, where in that time a low cost carrier makes their money by flying there and quickly back and then quickly going again. So the turnaround time, it is a Formula One pit stop. It is literally quick turnaround time. Off you get, new passenger on. It's a bus.
I would say I flew a lot in flight. Was one of my categories. So the in flight category was about an interesting story around that. When I first joined EasyJet, being a retailer, I was asking on Monday morning trading meeting, what's the sales of last week for in flight? I said, well, Bill, what do you mean? So we don't get those for another week. Well, what do you mean it's another week? Well, all the paper gets reconsolidated and sent back to a central office, and then we count it up. It was literally cabin crew, bless them, doing what they could, but they were using paper receipts. There was no EPOS in flight. And so we worked with our partner at the time, which is Gate Retail, to put EPOS devices into. That was in itself a really hard bit of work. It was change management. And and some of the cabin crew didn't necessarily want to adopt this new technology, So it was hard to really, for various reasons, and there was other challenges which I won't go into. But certainly it was hard to do that simple thing, which is we take for granted. I put technology in EPOS devices, so you can pay with a card in flight. That didn't exist back then. So
because you're retraining crew, and it sounds so simple. By the way, it does sound simple, but you're asking someone's job description to change, another skill for them to adopt, other than being an ambulance, a fire service, a hospitality expert, everything that you're asking them to be, and now telling them to become a sales agent as well. It's hard work, and from a low cost carrier point of view, they have a sales job as well. They probably have targets. They probably have to push more than your regular flag carriers.
And it's all over. I mean, looking back at where I am now, advising various companies, and I've got a company who I work with who are amazing, based in Melbourne, who do exactly that. They now provide short form content, video content, TikTok style content to educate frontline staff. We were gearing towards retail initially, and we realised that cabin crew is a great audience. If you can give them, short, sharp, concise information and give them questions on the back of it, they'll learn about the products they sell in flight. They like their job better. They can engage with people passengers in flights to sell more, and they get paid for it. So we get paid for earn while you learn. So all of a sudden, my experiences of doing that has helped me think more creatively about how new technologies can help legacy processes, but get better.
Wow, amazing.
So, yes.
So then now you got your bug of travel, hopefully. And
yeah, I mean, it's fun. It was only like I said, it was less than 4 years, but I seemed to have lived off EasyJet for the 10 years ever since. Yeah, I did some consulting work after that. Sad, who was the CCO when the CEO of Flybe, he asked me to do some work when he was CEO at Flybe with a joint venture we had in Finland. So spent time there with Finnair. And yeah, I did various other consulting. I also did a lot of work during that time afterwards with eBay across Europe on their marketplace strategy. I mean, back then, Amazon and eBay were almost the same size. It's hard to believe now, right?
Crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
But it was how you bring retail best practice to eBay. Fixed price, buy it now products rather than auction products and all that stuff. So it was good. That was good fun. So I did all that. Then go back to your sales point, being a salesperson. I was then actually I should miss out. I spent 3 years working at B&Q as well as initially as a advisor on their new technology stack, and then I laugh, as category director for kitchens and bedrooms.
Taking you back.
Take me back, because while I was consulting on omni-channel strategy and our new e-commerce platform with an ex-colleague actually from Tesco Direct who took a senior role at B&Q. They said, "Oh, Bill, but we've got a vacancy for category director for kitchens and bedrooms." I'm going like, "Really? Don't come to me for this. I'm not interested. It's the most complex category you could possibly manage." But I mentioned after a few conversations, said yes. I managed that for a couple of years, which was good fun. So again, back into big ticket retailing. So you can see flipping between travel and retail during that whole period. Then the next big pivot for my career was I was approached by a software development company called ThoughtWorks, and ThoughtWorks were and still are the pioneers of the Agile movement, and literally the Agile Manifesto was partly signed by some of their executive team. So I knew nothing about them. I never worked with a professional services business. They wanted me to do what they call business development. I'm going like, explain to me what this is. This is back to the power of the network. They said, well, you spend a lot of time in retail and in travel and clearly well connected. Know a lot of this. At this point, I've done a lot of consulting work across travel and retail. I knew a lot of people because when you get older, people around you get older and they get bigger jobs.
Yeah,
by perseverance.
Funny
sometimes.
thing, right?
So I had quite a good connectivity even at that point, and ThoughtWorks said, look, we're growing as a business. In the UK, retail is only a small percentage of our portfolio. It was like less than 5%. Can you come in and help us grow that? And I go, all ears. Let's do it. For me, I always put myself out there as wanting to challenge myself and my knowledge, learn more. I mentioned being curious previously. I think that's how you stay young, stay fresh, and stay relevant in many ways. And they were a great company. I got to know them really well, and they were some of the best years of my life. The best people, some of my best friends, just like ex-thought workers, as we call them. And I learned a lot about adaptive systems, lean, agile, CI, CD, test-driven development, evolutionary architecture, how you build systems which are responsive and can be personalized for end consumers' needs. So I obviously made that. And I started being able to be the bridge between business and technology. So we'd have a lot of engagements, likes of John Lewis, Sainsbury's, where I would go in and talk to the executive team about their bigger problem statements, try and figure that out, and then we would drop in agile teams to go and build out some solutions. So rather than just eulogizing about 5-year plans, we drop teams in to build out MVPs, minimum viable products,
short, sharp,
up to 12-week stints, and so with that, I was getting even more connectivity across industry. And then I guess, again, bringing back to being here talking about travel, one of the more interesting ones was we received an inbound proposal from a guy called Glenn Morgan.
No one knows him.
Don't know if you know him. But for what they were calling a catapult program, sponsored by Willie Walsh and Robert, who was the CSO there at the time. Say, look, we want to do a bit of work, looking out at the market around innovation, around technology in its broader sense, and see how do we become more relevant as a brand across the IAG group. I think they're thinking British Airways specifically, but it was across all the operating companies. Yeah. And so yeah, that was a bit of an eye opener. We pitched for the work, and I brought in the greatest minds and ThoughtWorks to win it, and we did. And I remember the first time I wasn't an industry expert. I knew the name Willie Walsh. I'd seen all the stuff on TV, but I didn't know much. When he walked into the room the first time, I knew people paid attention, right?
He's one of those guys, and commonly everyone I ask in this about them, they only have positive to say. Like, we need more people like him in the industry. When he walks in a room, he owns that room. He's fascinating, and I've had a number of encounters with him, and I've asked him to come on this podcast, and apparently I have to go through his legal team and his communications team, but we're going to make it happen.
We'll get there eventually.
We're going to manifest it. It's going to happen.
Get there eventually. So that was amazing. Like, I mean, hats off to the ambition. It was like, I think what Willie was saying, and Glenn, how do we stop becoming a dumb pipe? Which I thought was an interesting thing to say. What do you mean dumb pipe? I mean, we have the tin, we have all the aircraft and the infrastructure to move people around the world, but the experiential stuff around that, we're not good enough at creating that. And there's a danger all the experiences and all the excitement around digital gets done by disruptors, innovators, and they just come to us for that last bit, which is actually getting on a plane and flying. And so yeah, it was amazing. Myself and a guy called Barry O'Reilly, who's the co-author of Lean Enterprise, and a few others from ThoughtWorks. We sort of set on this crusade of an 8-week program, and Willie and Glenn and Scotty at the time took out 8 senior executives from their day jobs for 8 weeks, and like, so we backfilled you. 8 weeks, you're going to behave like a startup. You're going to act like a startup, behave like a startup, and we're going to find business like a startup. You're going to bring it back to our executive team and pitch for funding like you're a startup.
Wow. And
that was like an amazing journey for us. So, and the first time I got to know some of the team, and we went, the first week, we went to, I think it's been previously mentioned, perhaps, we went to San Francisco, and we saw like 42 startups in 5 days, down Silicon Valley, Anderson, Horowitz. We met Twitter and some brands that are now household, like, we're at the beginning, Airbnb, we're just at the beginning of their journey. So we're walking around because we're very tactile, ThoughtWorks, all about post-it notes and cards, little cards. So you see something, you write on a card and you stick it up, and we had a big war room with a wall with all the ideas and innovations we had. And so we did something which is called Double Diamond Discovery. So you expand big, idea as broad as possible, and then you zoom in to 4 or 5 ideas which fit the problem statement, and then you explode them out further, those ideas out further with all the features and capabilities you would need to make them happen. Then you zoom in and you complete it. So we spent a week in San Francisco. We spent I think 2 weeks in Barcelona with Wellings' offices, but also talking to what was called millennials back then. I think. About what's their perception of the brand and what's innovation mean to them, and I think it was mind blowing with some of the executives, because I know it was personally for them sort of career changing as well. They saw industry and travel from a totally different light, and they realized that they need to get out of the building more often.
Can't just be at the desk in the meeting room.
and see what's happening. So, and obviously in the back of that, then IAG launched Hangar 51 and all that great stuff.
There's a big segue there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
you gave.
We got there eventually, right?
Yeah.
There was a segue coming.
Through your work there, whole history, whole journey, and then getting this piece of work to study an aspect of the problem statement of how do we remain relevant and make sure we aren't commoditized and just become this bus, in essence, a transport vehicle, and that's it. How do we further grow and innovate ourselves, taking an inward stroke outward look in, asking for external help, and you giving birth to what is widely regarded as the first innovation hub stroke accelerator in the aviation industry. That's a pretty big deal. That's a good notch under the belt, and they've been pretty successful. Let's call it that.
No, I can't claim all. I just say, man,
you're the only one in the room. You could.
I'll claim it, and I'll take it. But I think obviously Glenn and Scotty were really driving that, but we were facilitating the process, and hopefully we made some contribution towards that becoming what it is today. But I think with that, also inspired by the work that some of the people I worked with at ThoughtWorks did around lean enterprise, and a lot of that principles. Barry O'Reilly wrote the book on the back of our catapult experiences called Unlearn. A bit of a plug for you, Barry, there, which was an Amazon bestseller. So that was literally our catapult experience, warts and all. And so we've talked about that quite a bit around how to. His book Unlearn is about that, exactly that. How do you unlearn legacy behavior and to go and be able to build things in a smaller, more agile way? And that's something that I've taken with me quite a bit since my ThoughtWorks days, and certainly since the Catapult program. Ironically, it was hard, even though we landed on 4 or 5 ideas out of the back of that program. It was one thing getting the ideas agreed, another thing getting them delivered. And clearly that's back to the BAU thing. In Airlines, they got this. I think one product got delivered on the back of it, but like I said, gave birth to innovative thinking. But it was really hard to get those products delivered through existing technology teams, especially in airlines. They're just consumed what I call a ball of mud.
Yeah,
it's like everything is joined to something else. And you pull one thing,
one thing after the other. Touch one thing, one thing breaks.
Exactly, and that's that's partly why I consult now on organizations to go and build more adaptive systems. Microservices would be a big calling card for me. And so I think there's something in that. How do you get that outside in thinking? I think if you talk about lean enterprise, we talk a lot about the concept of buy, partner, and build. So if you think about what's in your product backlog, your innovation backlog, on the back of any program, a discovery program or a catapult program, what bits of that do you want to look out at, and what do you want to build? And typically you build stuff where you want to own the IP, or it's important to your core business model. You build that with your internal teams. But stuff that's been commoditized, whether it be payments or bookings, whatever, you should really think about partnering or buying that in. And so you can build agility into your backlog, and you can move faster.
So from an airline, actually, this is going to come on to a great piece, and we will have a detailed discussion because it's really popular at this time, and it is the offer order management, shop order set, or whatever you want to call it. It has so many different names, but there's just a point that you raised there, the build in-house where you want to own IP, the gain outside. Not conventionally airlines would love to build everything, and they conventionally have, and that's why we're a lot of legacy. And they've had to sell off some of those elements that have become multi-billion-pound companies now, and they shoot themselves in the foot for it. But I don't think that knowledge or that structure would have enabled the billion-pound growth of that technology. The point is, I believe, counter me by all means, there's only 2 or 3 pieces of IP left in an airline. And this may be where commoditization is coming through, that whole risk other people will avoid. The brand on the tail fin, and what the brand exists for, the people, the crew, the pilots, the experience, and revenue management. The only 3 bits of IP left in an airline. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I guess you're far off. There's some other operational bits, maintenance and stuff that you could argue even that's outsourced these days, right? So yeah, you're pretty close to it. And even definition of revenue management, I'm working with a revenue management business at the moment who are doing machine learning and AI optimization, which you probably wouldn't do inside, a classic legacy. But you could take bits of it, then adapt that as well, and improve.
Yeah, there's natural AI, and then there's AI ML with business rules. Yeah, exactly. Physically written of here are my legacy rules. Work within these parameters. Not here's your freedom. Go ahead, kind of thing. But do you think we're moving towards that?
Well, obviously the low-cost carrier model going direct was different. Getting rid of the drug, which is the big GDSs, right? It was I know the GDSs are trying to adapt, and NDC was aimed to do that. And in fact, when we were working the IG NDC was just being launched at that time. We were trying to think, what does that mean? What is that protocol? How does that get used to make airlines more adaptive, more responsive? But it's probably my biggest frustration with the airline industry is the lack of. And if I think of low cost carriers, I know 'cause I work with them. I still have done since I left. Is you outsource as much as possible. You keep your internal operating costs quite lean, even from a software delivery perspective. So with how I see comparison, the likes of the big fly carriers will have fairly big in-house, I'll call IT teams, whereas low-cost carriers have outsourced more of that. I think that's changing a bit, but I think there's an aspiration. I mean, Ryanair have done a great job of bringing a lot of their software development production in-house.
But do you think it's cyclical with the times? So if times are sort of tough, costs and the external environment is hard, you sort of conventionally, let me go to a supplier, reduce my costs. And when you are making great profit, you sort of in-house stuff, you build an in-house strategy. It's sort of cyclical. And I've seen it happen in, the likes of Vodafone, the likes of other areas as well. And it kind of happens on like an 8-year cycle, as it were.
Yeah, I think it depends if you want to play a long game. I think if you play a long game on this, you probably would want to have a much more product-focused internal team. I mean, I think some of the stuff that they've done at IG Loyalty, which was a legacy point business, moving that to a product-focused organization is kind of a really good example of a airline business doing something different. So they're very much classic squads and tribes as per Spotify now. It's very much that kind of model. So it can be done, but they're not. The loyalty team aren't by definition not an airline. they don't have all the gubbings of an airline, so they probably can move a bit faster. But I think there's always a need to have flexibility. But if I'm talking to a retail business or an airline, I would say there's a right mix between having flexibility. So when you need to pivot towards a new innovation or build something quicker or do something, being able to ramp up or ramp down a outsourced delivery partner is useful. Because obviously hiring engineers, software developers, but certainly Western markets is getting quite expensive, right? So having the flexibility to ramp up and ramp down software delivery is something I think that airlines should be adopting.
Building in.
But I do think actually back to the squads and tribes, I do think that is it's well talked about, not probably over talked about because Spotify approach towards it, but it's been well adopted by most progressive tech companies now. I think for airlines to really survive in a fast-paced environment, they'd have to have a much more product-focused delivery process. I think that's kind of with what I said beforehand, having a dimension of buy, partner, build as well at the same time. So I think that there's a possibility they'll get there. I mean, and if you're building an airline from scratch, what would you do? You probably do it a lot differently, right?
So we're going to come to that actually. Yeah. Perfect point, because people are building airlines from scratch. We're in the fascinating world where we've got the view of a brand new startup coming with very deep pockets that is starting from scratch, because that just fascinates me. Because do you just buy a software and it's ready to go, or do you self-build? How does it work? If you were doing it with your retail background, with you've got a decent budget, margin isn't, revenue isn't the issue because you're starting from zero. Stage by stage, without being too technical, how would you build it? What would you do?
I think you'd have to have a pretty extensive period of discovery, understanding the wider consumer landscape in terms of innovation, where it's coming from, what are you trying to solve for? What's your customer persona going to be? What is your full customer journey map, and where do you want to be known for being great? You want to be great at that one thing. So my inclination would be and there's some classic work around design thinking and service blueprints, which you can tease this stuff out. I've worked with some great companies over the last 5 years who are amazing doing proper design sprints and service blueprints before they do design sprints, obviously. So I think there's a bit of mapping that out first extensively. But I would really focus on, the retail side first. Clearly, I would say that. But I think, and the output just tends to be they get on a plane at the very end, and it's then it doesn't end there, of course. There's the in-flight Wi-Fi connectivity, which nobody's quite cracked just yet. But but I think you'd extend that into the aircraft as well from that perspective. But in terms of the network planning, the route management, that's almost like a byproduct of consumer buying behavior, of demand. I did some work with Booking.com years ago, and I always remember their approach towards inventory in new locations was based on demand. It wasn't based on somebody in an executive office going, "Hey, we should be in, Croatia, we should be in
Yeah, this is where my boss is telling us to
go." We'll have data inputs based on buying behavior and demand in those areas. Once we see demand, then we'll pile in. So, which I think sometimes in the airline space is like sometimes routes are getting so thick and so difficult to compete on. You move somewhere else where it's less competitive. But what's the demand? So I would be very much, to answer your question, retail first. I'd be looking to build a proper microservices platform, so you can swap in and swap out applications and services depending on the need, the region, the location, the persona, the demographic, and then you got that flexible system which allows you to respond to consumer demand. And I think not just today but tomorrow as well, as a new innovation comes on the market, you can consume it quickly without taking the whole system down, like that ball of mud thing.
Yeah. We call it the PSS.
Cool. I like that one as well. So I think definitely a microservices approach. I'd apply a lot of my marketplaces thinking to it as well in terms of the upsell cross-sell, so you can improve ultimately your ancillary revenue per seat or your retail sales per seat. And there's so much more we can do in that space. And that's I'm clearly spending most of my time these days working with a company that does connectivity in destination through data roaming and eSIMs. And I think that's, for me, been really interesting because all this I talk about, it brings it to life from a how do you stay connected with your consumer, and that's kind of really, it's there's almost a handoff when you think about selling an airline seat. Done, they're on the aircraft, brilliant. Turnaround time is 25 minutes. KPIs are ticked. Revenue per seat X, load factor is Y. Whew. Next one. But of course, it's a continual loop. They're in destination. You want to sell to, upsell, cross sell, have good customer service, allow them to feel comfortable. But you want to keep that loop going. They want to come back and do it again and again and again. And I know people don't fly every week, and but there's frequent flyers out there who do fly multiple times in a year.
Yeah.
So I think I take very much that marketplaces, microservices approach towards building a new airline. Yes, of course, management systems, DSSs, PSSs, all that stuff exists, but they wouldn't exist how we recognize them, I think.
They would evolve. And that brings me greatly to offers and orders.
Yeah.
It's new, not new. It is new.
Oh, you know what it means.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this is it. It is. Yeah, we don't help ourselves with definitions and things, but in essence, it is the aspiration of trying to be a better retailer. It is trying to copy the likes of a Tesco, Amazons, and others to be able to break down products to its atomic form and allow the customer to pick what they want. Because you can have an economy seat with 23 kg bag already attached, and then some customers don't even use that or don't need it, so why are they paying for it? So some airlines are pivoting towards that. If I start using some of the acronyms of fair families, EMDs, and all this sort of, there are business rules attached that the product can only be created this way. Unfortunately, that's what we're bound by. And I constantly do it, and I should have bought the prop, but it's literally a carbon ticket that you used to get when you used to fly. Those same fields have gone into a computer, which means the spacing is the same. The characters of what you can input is the same. That's what they have built.
Yep.
So these engineering marvels that fly through the sky at such pace and get you to the other side of the world in X amount of hours operate on that. Let that sink in, and
crazy.
It is unlocking that. But that risk aspect has flown into the digital channels and the systems that you use, that we can't disrupt or break that part of travel. So we have to do it chunk by chunk. You can call it agile, not so agile, because we've been at it for a number of years. how do you think this trend goes now? Because you would have seen in industry a number of people talking about it. We're going to build order platforms, and you're going to have an order number. You won't have a P&R, be able to talk to you. What do you think about that?
God, what do I think about that? Oh, a lot. I think that there's something in that which is, it's just fundamental best practice retailing. It's not necessarily complicated per se. I think we're hearing we have for some time around data scientists and data engineering, creating data-driven platforms. And I think those orders and offers are basically, somebody wants to go from X to Y. They have a certain criteria, a certain set of needs, and to make that a joyful experience, you want to make sure they can get access to things they need pretty quickly, right? So I think that, for me, that's personalized commerce, probably hyper-personalized commerce, and it's become quite a big trend over the last 5 years, and an aspiration almost for many retailers. Like, how do we become hyper-personalized based on consumer data? There's so much of it now. I think a new generation of travelers are much less precious about data privacy. I do laugh at GDPR sometimes, because I think it's also almost past the sell-by date. There's a need for privacy and security, don't get me wrong. But I think there's something around getting access to that data, whether it be social data, whether it be buying behavior, whether it be, cookies over a number. They will, and this is even from Catapult program, we know this, people will give you their data if they trust you. People tend to trust airlines. I don't know why. For some reason, they trust airlines. We trust you with our data, kind of thing, which is interesting in itself. But I think there's something about being data-driven, which really unlocks orders and offers in a way which, because you'll know, flying Edinburgh to Luton is a really short flight, mainly business traveller. There's not a lot of bags being checked in. But you're probably offering the same booking flow for those customers as we are
as a normal one.
As one to Egypt. So, which is crazy, right? That's kind of a crude example. But even within that one flight, there's different dynamics. You'll know age, profile. You should do. I mean, P&Rs don't give you a great amount of data. But if you give way of allowing consumers to give you data in exchange for better experiences, I think there's data there to be had. And it takes a really brave sort of data-driven organization that put a strategy in place that allows them to go to those external data points and bring that data in to make sure those orders and offers are hyper-personalized. Then your conversion levels go up. And you can experiment with it, right? You can take Agile, try it on one route, take a small example of a new product you're going to innovate with and try it and see what the conversion level. So if it works, incrementally grow it. If it doesn't, kill it, move on to the next one. Mm-hmm. So I think there's something in that kind of world of being agile, which helps with it a lot. But I think it's being data driven and putting users first. This isn't just a problem for travel. I mean, I work with many retail companies who just spend 12 months on a product, roll it out to market based on some sort of broad desktop research, or on looking at somebody else doing it and saying we should do this too, and that doesn't work, and they spend like multi-million pounds doing it. So I think there's something about data will allow you to be more agile, data will allow you to be more responsive, more personalized, improve conversion, improve revenue per seat, probably improve load factor as well. So I think, well, that answers the question, and probably it links back to your previous thing around, digital airlines and what should they look like. That's my view. I'm really passionate about this stuff now. I don't know how this happened over my career, but I've become really passionate about, evolutionary architecture, microservices, design thinking, and all the agile concepts and delivery processes that support that to bring it to true. And I don't see many airlines adopting that. I mean, I don't see many retailers adopting it, to be honest. But certainly pure play tech companies, maybe more than others. But I think that's ultimately going to hold back airlines from being just amazing retailing.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I think I don't know what it is. It's this hook, and I'm from the same background in terms of doing digital transformations and things like that. There is You see the logic, you see everyone discussing it, and you're like, right, there's a roadmap, there's a way to get there, everyone knows we want to get to. Then you realize you're in an ecosystem and with many incumbents and others have to move for you to act on that. That slows you down. So then you start focusing your attention on them, getting them moving. By the time you come back, industries change and now something else needs to happen. So you need to now it's that constant moving from one to other. And that is, I guess, that's the wonder of innovation and pivoting and reacting fast enough. And that's where we say, you know, possibly legacy companies don't, and they just manage it in time to get by. But that only has a certain life scale. You know, you've seen great brands fall from being, you know, you can take M&S for example, great home brand, and that's dropped massively. You'll see likes of John Lewis and stuff like that who are able to pivot slightly, but a bit more slower to the party, still existing. It's the brand that keeps them there. That's what I mean. The IP is that brand element that keeps people coming back. But I do think it's a fascinating space.
Totally.
Probably a busy space for you. If you come to the party of offers and orders, it's I can see loads of attention going on it. There is tons of roadmaps for people to build. There are just a couple of leading airlines. Everyone, I guess, is playing the game of we're going to see someone do this first, then we're going to go there. No one's going to lead from the front. I think there's just this jostling going forward of who's going, and looking over your shoulders, which I think is slightly irritating because that's what causes slowness.
And I think so. I've recently been looking to launch a new airport innovation hub program, which we're launching hopefully next year. But it's the same thing. My itch with airports is they're all broadly don't compete, and they're trying to solve the same problems, right? They're trying to solve the same, you know, whether it be biometrics, seamless experience, security, homeland security, control, revenue, airside, you know, duty free. They're all the same. The same. But so my point is, you don't compete. You should collaborate and work together in an innovation kind of way, and have a backlog of innovations, and then own the IP. But I'll come to that another time. But I think it's broadly the same for airlines. You know, we could probably between us go on a wall here and probably map out 50 things and orders and offers that would be important to make successful. And I think it's about, back to my previous point, it's about creating a technological stack or a microservices platform that allows you to bring those in and swap them in and swap them out by region and by customer base. So if you have like a innovation backlog for orders and offers, they'll be sized by return on investment or customer demand, or by is it marketing or is it technology or is it operations? You color code them and stuff. But I think being really focused and having product teams that can move fast and deliver against those innovation backlogs will speed up your internal innovation cycles. Once your internal innovation cycles are slower than the market is at, you're going one direction, right? So what I'm saying in the airline space with the disruptive technology coming through is innovation cycles speeding up to a level I've never seen before. And that's not going to slow down. That's just Moore's law, right? Yeah. It's going to keep going faster and faster. But I don't see the foundations being put in place within the airlines to cope with that. So the innovation cycle. So if you want an experience as a traveller and you can't get it from, because people are less brand loyal now, it's because you're British Airways or Emirates or Air France. There's no guarantees people will go to you. They'll find it somewhere else. Okay, they mightn't have the tin, but they'll get the experience somewhere else. And it's back to the whole Willie Walsh thing about being a dumb pipe. So I think you do need not to just have product ideas and execute against them. You need to have a format, a conveyor belt, which allows you to continually innovate and bring products to market quicker. And then you'll catch up. I don't think airlines will ever be, well, unless you're sorry for blank canvas, which we talked about, but never be like
at the forefront.
Very cutting edge. I think it's hard, right? There's a lot of cost, not a risk in that as well. But it could be a fast follower. And along that journey, you might find your own innovations which work for you, which other people will look at and go, "Wow, that's amazing! That company are doing this with orders and offers. We hadn't even thought about that." And all of a sudden, you are in some ways becoming a pioneer. So I think there's something in that which is really, really interesting. And I think in some companies have really spent time thinking about it. I was chatting to someone from American Airlines during the pandemic, and they, rather than cutting back on their how's it going? In fact, me and Barry interviewed the person in question. Instead of putting people what we call furloughed or losing, we kept our innovation team in place, and we just piled through our innovation backlog while we weren't flying. So when we start flying again, we're going to delight customers. They're going to come back and see all these new features on the AA app they hadn't seen before. And of course, they've now responded from the pandemic almost faster than anybody in North America.
They've done an amazing job. I mean, the pivots that they've done, I think they've refreshed their C-level, their management, and they're taking a completely different approach, and a ballsy one, let's be quite frank. They're really challenging their competitors because they've seen that we need to be different. And they're doing some remarkable things faster than the other industry. And the Americans aren't renowned to being fast, okay? They are the worst of the bunch, if anything. But now they're really spearheading the way. I think that's left European airlines shocked and watching. So hats off to the AA team for that work. But I think that brings us nicely to this sort of next part. So we covered you getting to the airline space and how you're working and pivoting and the constant pivoting. I think that's quite important as well. The industry hot topics of offers and orders and retailing and how does someone go about that journey. But then now we come to that latter part of yourself, Bill, of where do you see yourself in this space? How do you feel like and where you could help and lead in this space? Because it's people are going to need a lot of help, and it seems like you've got this wide breadth of experience, not only in retail, which everyone's after, but in travel and connecting those two. You're a bit of an asset in the aviation space.
I would hope so. Stage my career. I think. Listen, I don't know what the future holds. Like I said to you, I'm curious. I'm always looking to challenge myself in new environments. I've been lucky enough over the last sort of 5 years to have a lot of advisory roles. And like we said at the very beginning, I think the power of the network for me has become very, very important. And I think it's not just for the sake of it, but I'm really enjoying just connecting people. I'm seeing a lot of really interesting, dynamic young startups who just don't have the ability to refine product market fit, perhaps, but also think about their go-to-market, then connect them with the right people who will give them the time to listen to their idea. So I'm really enjoying that, connecting companies. I think I'm sort of, it's kind of weird you mentioned sales previously. I'm adamant I'm not a salesperson, right? But I know a lot of people, and that clearly is a valuable asset to a lot of organizations. If you can join dots, both on a people side of things, but also commercially, become like a bit of a make deals happen. That's got huge value, and I've really enjoyed over the last 3-4 years finding companies to help them with that, and I hope to still keep doing that. It's led me to, I guess, where I am today is I was at the Future Travel event in Dublin about a year and a half ago, and I met a couple of young founders, and they said, "Oh, Bill, can we chat to you about our product, what we're doing? We think we've got a huge opportunity for the travel industry." And they come from a telco background. They're going, "Tell me more. What is it? How can it help passengers, airlines, airports?" So, well, we think there's been a high amount of exploitation over the course of the last 5, 10, 15 years, certainly on data roaming and people going to certain destinations. Obviously,
this is me paying extortionate amount of money to use my phone.
Some of the stories they told me, I was going like, "Are you serious?" Like I was like, people coming back with €15,000 or dollar bills from like going to Turkey or Egypt. There's some countries where it's really expensive, Canada as well. And I said that's really interesting. But what do you see the angle with the airlines? We're thinking, well, we think. Airlines could benefit from a new revenue stream. I go, yeah, I get that, but I used to run ancillary businesses, and unless it's got like a 6-figure number, it's not people aren't going to listen to it. So I, by working with them over the last sort of year, we've sort of said it's more about what I call the connected traveler, and being able to create a product which makes the airlines become the passenger or the traveler champions. Make sure your passenger, whether you're EasyJet, or whether you're BA, or whether you're Wizz Air, or whatever, make sure your customers are not exploited in destination. So there's a halo effect for your brand by doing that. because you're looking after them, so they have joyful experiences when they travel, and you're also giving yourself the chance to stay connected with them in destination. So whether there's a black swan event, another volcano, or cloud dust, or a God knows what, you can get in touch with them. Any black swan event, you can get in touch with them really quickly. Customer service, there's been a change to the flight details. You know they're connected. So what happens with customers, passengers in destination, is they go dark in between from the hotel.
Airplane mode.
Yeah, well, you do
Leave it on and connect to Wi-Fi only, right?
Because they know all the bad experiences, right? They go, I don't want to be stung for thousands of pounds, and data roaming turn off, right? But if they have a affordable daily package, which is underwritten in many ways by the airline, to say, like, we're going to guarantee you got connectivity for an affordable price, there's so many wins. So upsell, cross-sell, and destination. Hey, 50% of your data allowance has now been used up. Hope you're having a great holiday. And by the way, anything else we can help you with? You need a car rental for a few days? Do you want to get an upgrade on your seat on the way back? There's so many things you could be saying to them in destination, in a not too spammy kind of way. Of course, you want to limit the amount of comms, but I think there's something in that which is really quite interesting. And there is a revenue stream with it as well. Surprising that people, eSIM technology now is like, I think the iPhone 14 in North America was eSIM only. So quite soon we'll look back in days to come and go, hey,
It's just normal.
remember back in the day, Dad, did you have one of those little plastic SIM things? And you stuck a pin in the side of your £1,000 smartphone to put it in? Yeah, we actually did that, So like eSIM will become the standard.
Norm.
Yeah, and once you have eSIM Go, who I'm working with, have Apple Carrier status. And so, I mean, if in the future it'll be a seamless experience, you're just clicking on a button and all the settings adjust accordingly, and off you go and enjoy your holiday, kind of thing. So that's been real, and I'm spending a lot of my time, well, majority of my time now working with them.
That's quite fascinating. The hardest nut to crack is the post-booking phase.
Yep.
Is because the customer has left your aircraft, has left your crew, so there isn't an interaction touch point.
Yep.
It's over to the hotel, the car company, the destination now, and I'll see you when you come on board next.
Yeah.
Other than a marketing email of be sure to use your loyalty currency or, how was your hotel, how was your flight? That's basically the only interaction you can kindly have, because you've either checked a box GDPR-wise to market or not, or you're a loyalty customer.
Yep.
The post-booking phase, you don't really have anything. Otherwise, you're relying on them to open your app to interact with them.
Yep.
Quite frankly, I don't do that. And I can assume 90% of other people don't do that unless 2-3 days before the flight to check on time, am I checked in?
Yep.
Otherwise, when I'm on holiday, I don't open an airline app. Never.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. These guys can keep the app always on as well, so there's no cost to opening the app as part of the service. So yeah, like there's some it's a really interesting space. Now, even I was EasyJet, that whole destination services was always a big thing. How can we unlock that? It's never going to be the biggest revenue stream per se, because we know the big chunks are bags and seats and things like that, and insurance. But certainly, I think there's something significant in there. So I've really enjoyed working with that company over the last and it's just nice to work with young, enthusiastic, ambitious and humble, founders who respect you for your experience and sort of embrace that. So that's been a really enjoyable last 12 months working with those guys. So I still have some other advisory stuff I do. I mentioned, the AI optimization stuff. I'm really passionate about that, and revenue management especially, but also ancillary revenue. And then the stuff we mentioned around looking at content for frontline staff, whether it be cabin crew or retail. And I've got other firms I'm working with as well, professional services companies, just helping them get growth. So
you're a busy man.
Every day is different. Every day is different. Keeps it enjoyable as well.
So there's two things I want to dive in there. One is the network.
Yeah.
We talked about how you could recommend building a network. Again, the reason I create this podcast is because many podcasts will say, build a network. Here's how, LinkedIn. That next aspect, you can't give every bit of information and feed everything to everyone, but you were talking about long-lasting relationships, how you built connections that have lasted a long time. There'll be people here who have a network or have met people, but that haven't maybe converted into long-lasting relationships. Is there a trick, a pointer that you do that you concentrate on, or is it just completely natural and this is your personality?
I don't know. It is natural. I think there's a lot. Like if I look back at my life, I've told you a bit about my past, and I'd never the intention of being this sort of matchmaker or connector, or I just
You're the technology Tinder.
I just there's just a, if you're genuinely curious about people and who they are, what they take, get to know. Because we're only passing through here once. If you meet someone you want to really at least try and, on a meaningful level, try and connect with, understand, is there something there which we should be discussing more? I think that's, so natural curiosity with people, something I would really encourage, because that person you just never know in the future might be able to help you out, not even on a business level, on a personal level. So I've been really, and I've been lucky enough to put myself in uncomfortable situations and consult, go into cold rooms, have to talk about stuff I'm not necessarily the expert in the room on. And if you continually put yourself in those situations, you'll continually grow, but you'll also continually meet people, and it's staying connected with them. It's saying, you say you'll check in with them. I'll check in you check in 6 months time, even just a small message like, how's it going? And I'm just good. And I don't know how my brain is wired, and some sort of weird mind map of people I know and how they're all connected, but it might just come with age. But I just know a hell of a lot of people. I just take real joy in connecting people who should be connected. I don't make money. Occasionally I might make some money, but not very often. Generally it's just because you people should talk together. And I think if you do that enough, good things will happen. I think that's a really important life lesson for people at the beginning of their career, is to think about who you're talking to, why you're talking to them, and listen and stay connected with them. Don't pass them. If they're busy with their life, let them be busy, because they'll come back. And I think for a lot of people, they just get involved in one job, and it might just be how their brain is wired, different to mine. They just go around, my head's down in this job. People in my sort of line of vision, I'll work with. Anybody outside of that, I haven't got time for, because I'm too busy being busy doing this one job. That's not me. That's why I work for many companies. I do mainly what's called, I think, business development these days, and which makes me laugh slightly. But I get great joy in going to conferences, meeting you. It's like only 2 months ago, right?
Literally 2 months. And look what it's turned into.
And look what we are now. So it's just like, you just never know what's around the corner. And so you should just be curious.
Open yourself to opportunity.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it's difficult for me. Yeah. I get tons of emails, LinkedIn's of, it could be random about, sir, can you give me a job? Like, that's a weird approach, but I'll respond and be like, sorry, I can't help. Yeah. But what do you need? Yeah. I've only started doing that recently. Otherwise, it would just be an ignore. I was in the previous camp, but now I realize the shoe's on the other foot, where I am asking for a lot of help, where I am asking for people to come on to a podcast that's relatively unknown and stuff. And loads of people are taking a bet on me because of the way I reached out and communicated. Yeah. It wasn't a one-liner. It was a lot of empathy, understanding, and adding a personal touch. Like, I really loved the LinkedIn post that you just gave. It really inspired me. I learned this from here. And then I continue the conversation from there. Yeah. It's those little practical gems of information that, and advice that I would give to people as well. Of be personable, reach out with manners, with intellect, with a purpose. It's not everyone has an ego. Like, you sometimes need to entertain that ego as well and say, I really loved your work, and you genuinely might as well. Yeah. But, catch their attention. They're probably getting hundreds of messages. Yeah. What's going to make you stand out from the other?
What's your USP?
Exactly that. Yeah. I mean, and this is going to lead me to my next sort of question. We're going through innovation after innovation. We've got AI, we've got generative AI, we've got ML, we've got connectivity, we've got new gen aircraft, sustainability. There's so much going on. And you're lucky enough to have a lens in much of the industry, retail, airline, everything. We're going to focus on airline. If you can, 5, some top startups or companies that are young, fresh, that you think could be really disruptive or add value to the airline space. Who are they? And quickly, what do they do?
Well, 5. I would have to tell you some critics. Like I said, I'm passionate about what I'm doing with those guys, and I think that connected traveler is something I'm pushing a lot in 2024. I think only because people are being exploited. I mean, it's scandalous. So I think what they've done with their API, and they're basically a SaaS business, and how it's developed their product is genius. And so I really encourage people to think about the connectivity they're giving their passengers. I think that would be really cool. I had a call this morning with a young company in Auckland called Relu Group, and they're doing, like I said, sort of AI machine learning within revenue management in a really disruptive kind of way. They're getting stuff I mentioned around getting hold of personal data and doing stuff where it exists, which is, really turns down conversion per seat and stuff like that. That's really clever. And there's lots of AI. I mean, the word generative AI is used last 12 months. It's like, it must be the most commonly used word in technology, perhaps. Yeah. It's like, but a lot of I would call, I would call more practical AI, in terms of, I think about classic McKinsey's 3 horizons. What stuff can you do in Horizon 1 here, especially for airlines who are very, low operating costs, very tight margins? They want to think, what can we make a difference on right now? I think Horizon 1, practical AI is really important. 5, you said 5, my God. I mean, Frontline, I've been working with for quite a while. They're a really cool company. I mean, the founder, Mark John, great guy. They've done some really amazing stuff around content and the science of learning, and allowing brands who are one step removed from their end customers to get connected with them. And it just taps into the TikTok movement, and it's a really clever business model. And I'm seeing real interest across the airline space from a cabin crew perspective. I know this isn't necessarily the one I'd work on from a digital perspective, but it certainly does add a lot of value for airlines. When was that, 3?
We're at 3.
Oh, right. I mean, if I would go slightly further out, I think there's stuff around less digital. I'm really curious about. I was really interested watching the thing recently with the first flight from Virgin, the SAF flight across the couple of weeks ago. I think there's something in aviation fuel, not even fuel, around aviation technology, around plasma production and hydrogen, which I think I'd love to be around, love to see where that goes to. Well, it's 10, 20 years away. I think that's fast. And there's some really great companies that was doing interesting work in that space. And they're doing the hard work. I can't remember the name of the company per se, but they're doing the hard work in terms of that sort of embryonic phase of technology. And they're probably going to burn through a lot of cash. So it'd be great to see investors come into that, because the long-term benefits for the environment and everything else are just amazing. So I'd love to see more work in that space. And I'd be, remiss of me not to mention I do have a company called Thrive Club still. And the Thrive Club, we take problem statements from large brands, whether it be travel companies, airlines, or retailers, and then we do scouting missions, tech safaris, and we find emerging technologies that solve that problem. And even if they don't consume them from a buy, partner, build perspective, it inspires the executive team or the business to say, hey, we were thinking about this solution to this problem totally wrong. This is how you solve it. And so looking out again, getting out of the building. And so I think Thrive Club is much on the back of Catapult and similar programs, is now facilitating that for quite a few brands, both in travel and retail. So a bit of a sales pitch happened.
Amazing. No. I mean, and this is what it's all about. It is passing that bits of information. So in the description, we'll put a list of those companies, so you can reach out for yourselves. Great bunch of people. I've met a couple of those companies myself, so I can vouch for them. They'll be in the link below. So Bill, I think that's a perfect way to bring that to an end. I don't let people go off so easily. There is one segment that I leave till the end, and it's one of our favourite and revered segments. It is our quickfire round. So I'm going to give you a minute to prepare. I hope you've seen it in the past. So it'll be quickfire, one-liners, and then you can go a bit further if we want to elaborate on anything. So yeah, let me just pull that up for us.
Sounds like fun.
Well, yeah, let's hope so. So let me know when you're ready, and we'll fire away. Favorite aircraft type?
Oh, private jet.
Oh, fancy you, huh?
Never been in one, but but the A320 as well. I mean,
window or aisle?
Aisle. every single time.
Really?
I wouldn't do it when I was younger, and I just want to go off the plane as soon as I can.
We need to change that.
And toilets as you get older is important.
Chicken or beef?
Oh, chicken.
One item that you can't travel without.
Noise cancelling earphones.
Third guest that said that. Any brand in particular?
AirPods.
Ah, okay. Your dream destination that you haven't travelled to?
Ooh. I wouldn't mind going. I've never been to Thailand, so Thailand would be nice. Or Mexico.
Oh.
Or Egypt.
So quite a few. Earliest aviation memory?
Oh, my first flight was, I was 16. We got a bus from Belfast to Gatwick. I kid you not. I got a flight from Gatwick to Athens. And people were smoking in the back of the plane. The back of the plane was for smoking. Can you believe that?
Nice.
It's like, whoa!
That's a long time ago. Yeah. Your worst travel experience?
Oh, on the way back from Greece.
Same trip?
Yes, we ran out of money. I was 16 and I traveled with my sister. And literally we had 30, it was drachma? It was about £20 left. And we had to go with the magic bus all the way from Athens to London. It took 4 days.
Wow.
And we got lost in Luxembourg and stuff like that, and we had no money, and so that was pretty horrendous. Yeah.
Well, at least the
it
ending
wasn't the magic
good.
bus.
You're still
Trade
here.
descriptions. The magic bus wasn't quite as magic as it was let out to be. Yeah.
One aviation or travel myth that you'd want to debunk?
I think the whole thing, I hear a lot from airports that the airline owns the customer. And I think nobody owns the customer. And so I think it's a much more, it should be a shared responsibility to make sure the customer has a good journey. So I think that the airline owns the customer, I think it's not quite true.
One innovation you think will change air travel?
Oh, hydrogen.
We had an interesting chat just previous to you. That's an interesting one. One piece of travel advice that you would give someone?
Be curious, speak to people. The person next to you on the plane, anybody.
Leads me on to my next one. Your dream person to sit next to on a long haul flight.
Ooh, this would be currently what I would think. Graham Hancock.
Really?
Yeah.
Any particular reason?
I'm just currently, I'm just fascinated currently with ancient civilizations and ancient technology.
The first question you'd ask him?
Younger Dryas, impact theory, timelines.
The last one, controversial one, but I asked this recently now, is why you came onto the podcast.
You know, I've always wanted, I've never done a podcast, and I think I've got a story to be told, which is interesting to show people don't need to get locked into a single career path. You can take risks and move and work across multiple industries, and pick up experiences along the way, and pick up life skills and stay connected and be the network is so powerful. And start nurturing that from a younger age. I think that's something I wanted to get across, and just sort of say, look, I think now is the time to do things you want to do. Get on and do them. Don't think about tomorrow. Get on and do them today, because you never know what's around the corner. So yeah, that's kind of one of the reasons why. And plus, I wanted to help you out as well. I think you seem like a nice guy.
I'm hoping so. It's going okay. Yeah. I mean,
no, thank you. It's been amazing. I really enjoyed doing it.
Well, that's it. I mean, so many people reached out and sort of said, look, we love the authenticity here.
Yeah, it's great.
We've chosen to be different. We don't just do audio, we do video, so a person can be seen, felt, connected with, and it gives us a great ability to create short form content to really put powerful messages out there. But thank you very much. That's our segment done, and what a brilliant podcast. I mean, eye-opener. I've covered so many different aspects. If you've seen the previous episodes, we've had engineers, we've had innovators, we've had operations, we've had sustainability, and now we've had I don't even know how to walk away and describe you now. You're Mr. Everything. You're a gem going forward. You're a fantastic person to connect with, and I thank you for the connections that you've given me, and just the conversations we've had in the 2 months to lead to something like this, and hopefully wider. And we're gonna stay in touch. And yeah, I wish you all the best going forward. By all means, I'm always a text away. So yeah, continue using that network.
Yeah, amazing. Really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for your time.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Take care, Will.
Thank you.
Bye.